It could be that that's just what dead people say in the FNAF universe. That's just a thing that they say. I don't know.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Right Toast, here with a cat who wants attention but doesn't want to lay down. I'm trying to record, and he's insisting on the lap. I think I've Pavlov'd dogged him to, anytime I turn studio lights on, come over here and sit on my lap, which is cute, and I like that. But man, I wish he would just sit and not, like, try to stand weirdly. Oh, you got a scab, buddy? You ever, like, pet a cat and just feel a bump where you didn't before? Okay, it's like a scab. Cool. Anyway, today's topic was in flux for a bit, and then I finished the week before. This goddamn book is going to be like half of my videos for the rest of the year. I'm not exaggerating when I say this goddamn book has so much lore in it. Like, by far the most lore in any FNAF book we've gotten. It's crazy how much lore this book gives us. So I guess spoilers ahead. Not yet. I will warn when spoilers start, so you have time. But just be aware there will be spoilers at some point. But I'll give a clear warning when we get into that. I want to like talk about the book itself first, and then we can dive into what it's saying, right? Because out the gate, this is a really good book. Like, possibly my favorite FNAF book that's been out there. Just like book-wise, not even necessarily what it's saying or what it's about, but like on the quality of the book, probably my favorite FNAF book. It's really good. So for anyone who knows nothing about this book or what I'm even talking about, the week before is the first official or like first full volume of the interactive novels that are coming out. The first one being VIP, which was free, shorter, and an ebook. This is the first like paper full volume interactive novel, and it follows the phone guy the week before FNAF 1. This isn't spoilers. This is like back of the book. Go back to where it all began in this interactive novel set before the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game. You, the reader, are the security guard, and you've got 5 nights, or is it 6, to survive Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy as they try to wipe you out. With over 50 different possible endings and 2 difficulty settings, this one-of-a-kind innovative novel is a uniquely entertaining experience for any Freddy fan. And that's no joke. Granted, as it says over 50 endings, there's over 50 deaths. There's like 5 endings, maybe 4. Like that actually say like the end or something similar on it. Most of them are just deaths. Grabbing my notes for the book too. I had to take look at this shit. I had to take this many notes while reading. I don't know if you can read that. That's like almost a full page of small notes. It looks like this because I kept it in the book while I read. So like 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages, right? Straight down. But like the book itself, really refreshing that it like unequivocally, inarguably, just on the back of the book, this book is set before the very first game. Bada bing, bada boom. This book is from the games. And it's from an important part of the games. It's before FNAF 1, giving us more context for FNAF 1 as a game. Because as much as we're pretty sure like what the robots are doing, what the possession is like at that point, who we're playing as, the state of Freddy's itself as of FNAF 1 is not super clear. We're not sure if the place is open, if we're guarding an abandoned location. It's unclear. And we've never had any good information about the phone guy, besides the fact that he probably worked there for a long time because it's the same one. Or is it just because Scott didn't hire any voice actors and it's Scott every time? There's things like that we really didn't know, and this book comes in for that. I mean, page 1, and this isn't really a spoiler because, like I said, it's on the first page. The phone guy's name is Ralph. After all this time, we have a name for phone guy. It's Ralph. I'm going to slowly transition to just saying Ralph instead of phone guy. I'll take like a half year or so to do it, because I'm sure if I just start saying like, oh yeah, in FNAF 1, Ralph tells us, people are gonna be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But for like the next couple months, I'll probably say things like phone guy or Ralph, as the week before tells us, and eventually I'll just start saying Ralph. It's nice to have a name for this character. But lore aside, like I said, the book itself is really good. It's a nice balance of that, like, horror. There is still horror here, but the like lighthearted nature that comes with Five Nights at Freddy's, where like it's spooky, but it's not terrifying, and that's ideal. Like it gets scary at moments. It's not afraid to get gory. There are some graphic deaths in this book, implied or directly stated. It gets bloody at times. But it's also not afraid to crack a joke. There's one moment that sticks out to me that I think is really, really funny, where, and I guess this is technically a spoiler, but it's one of the deaths you can get. I won't give you context. But technically this is a spoiler. One of the deaths you can get, Bonnie kind of corners you. No, I'm wrong. Foxy corners you in the office, and you're like backing up in the office to the back wall. And Foxy like raises his arm about to kill you. And then from the vent behind you, Bonnie grabs your legs and crushes them. Like you scream in pain. And literally you look down and Ralph goes like, really? And even Foxy looks annoyed. And then the death describes you being like, torn apart as if two kids were fighting over a toy to play with. And like that's a graphic death, but there's something absurdly funny and a little lighthearted about like in this moment of being about to die, somebody else kills you instead right before they get to you. And then even the killer was like, really? That was mine. So there's moments like that in this, that even when like Ralph is brutally dying, there's a little bit of levity, which makes this just a treat to read. It's also refreshing to have a FNAF book with a very likable protagonist. Like the Silver Eyes, I like Charlie for the most part. Like she's a pretty good protagonist. I love me a girl failure. But as far as like most of the short stories, half of them involve just like pieces of shit, you know? It's nice to have like an unambiguously nice character with like maybe a spotted history working for a bad company, but the guy himself seems really nice, and he's a dad. He's like the first good dad in the FNAF game timeline that is confirmed to exist. Like, because if Ralph is phone guy, which I think is pretty unambiguous, he is an in-universe like games timeline character, and he's a good father, which is really refreshing because the only other fathers we have confirmed to be in the game's timeline are William Afton, Henry Emily, and Oswald's dad. And like Oswald's dad is pretty good, but we know nothing about him. Meanwhile, Ralph, great dad, great guy. Love everything I've learned about him. So it's refreshing. I cannot wait for Return to the Pit and Escape the Pizzaplex if they're going to be at this quality with this amount of lore inside. So that all being said, we'll talk about the book for like 9 minutes, 10 minutes. Let's talk about lore. So spoilers ahead, but before you go, I was going to say this for halfway through the podcast, but I can sense like a good chunk of you guys are going to leave so you don't get spoiled for the book. This is technically the first podcast that is sponsored. And it's less of a sponsorship, more of a partnership. I don't know the exact legal terms, but I'm officially a partner with Gamersupps. They make drink products like this guy right here. They're really good. Genuinely, I wouldn't have partnered with them if I didn't enjoy the product. If you've been watching the streams, you know this already because I've been promoting them for about a week now, 2 weeks. I haven't promoted them in a video yet because I was focused on the plushie. But now that the plushie campaign is over, I can focus on marketing this. But essentially, if you use my code RIDETOAST on Gamersupps' website with a link in the description, you'll get 10% off your full order outside of this week. This week and this week only, and this ends this Friday at 2 p.m. EST. So like you won't even see this ad in the Friday video because it'll be over by then. But this week only, the code instead gives you free shipping worldwide, which depending on where you live might be a better deal than 10% off. Not only that, GamerSupps does this thing where once per flavor per household, you can order a free sample of any flavor. And you can do that for like once per flavor. So you can order all the flavors if you wanted to. Now, the way the free samples work is you get the sample for free, but you pay for shipping. This code works on those free samples. So theoretically, if you've never ordered free samples from GamerSupps, using code RYTOAST at checkout, double check when you do it, make sure you do it right. Theoretically, you can order all the free samples fully free, not even paying for shipping, and just receive free stuff. So if you like free stuff, use code RYTOAST at GamerSupps or the link in the description. Genuinely, it's really good. My favorite flavor so far has been Copium. It's like a cranberry. This is Incel Tears. It's like peaches and cream. It's really good. Anyway, back to the podcast. Now it's time to talk about spoilers because we're talking about lore. We learn a lot about the animatronics and their behavior in this book. Because going off of the games, I kind of always assumed that the animatronics kind of functioned like animals, like the rabid animals piloted by these spirits, right? The idea of like, they, not like literally animals, but they seemed very unintelligent. They would just attack things that moved or attack things that reminded them of William and not really think beyond that. But this book really characterizes them in a way that is closer to the FNAF movie, admittedly. They are intelligent. They are able to work together. They'll open doors for each other. At one point, Ralph is hiding in a vent in the office, and they burst into the office and they don't see him anywhere. So in that moment, they start checking the cameras to look for Ralph, which is crazy. Like, the idea that they can use the cameras too to look for you is insane. I had never thought of that. And it throws a wrench into a lot of the I know how I would survive FNAF 1 plans, to be honest. But not only are they smart, they're capable of making plans. And I kind of talk about this in this week's video. I'm going to be talking about stuff that I'll be talking about in videos because I'm going to make like 3 or 4 videos just on this book, maybe more. There's a lot to talk about from this book. But they are making a plan. So part of what we learn throughout playing the game, or reading the book, I guess, is there is another character named Brown and Light. And she is a junior, like a junior journalist, I think was the term, or like junior investigator. Like, she's a new junior reporter for like a newspaper. And she was trying to do a story on Freddy's and what's going on, but she wasn't allowed to print it. However, she calls Ralph and leaves a voicemail. If you answer that voicemail, you learn that she thinks they are planning to escape, wreak havoc, and kill Ralph's daughter, Coppelia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Her thinking is that they're mad that he gets to leave, even though he's worked here forever, but they still don't, which is why he's being targeted. But her theory is also that they were going to break out anyway. They're essentially bored and angry and tired of being in here, and they want to leave to go do whatever. And to do that, they were going to store up electricity overnight by like diverting electricity from the restaurant into their charging pads to overstore their batteries and then roam and just do whatever they want to, which is crazy. Like, this contextualizes FNAF 1 in a way we've never seen before. The idea that these animatronics are not only basically sentient, but they want out. You're not only guarding them and keeping yourself safe, you're guarding them and making sure they don't leave, which is crazy to think about. That being said, in a couple of the endings, Ralph does foil their plans and make it so they can't leave. So perhaps by the time of FNAF 1, that's not an issue anymore. You're just keeping yourself safe. But it's unclear. And I kind of wanted to talk about that. I hoped that when the FNAF 1 book came out, it would be pretty obvious which ending is the canon one, because we know what happens to Phone Guy before the beginning of FNAF 1. We're reasonably certain on night 4 he died. And then when you read this book, right, it's not on night 4, but on night 5, one of the endings you can get is Ralph recording one last voicemail for the next guy who works here, realizing he forgot to record one on night 4. So he records the night 4 message on his night 5, and it's the exact same one from the games. So it's like, oh, okay, this is the canon ending. There's an issue, though. This ending has no punctuation. It just says the end, which, if anyone read VIP, there were 2 endings in VIP. One had a question mark, and one had several asterisks. So we assumed the one with all the asterisks was the canon ending, since the other one had a question mark. But in the week before, the only ending with asterisks is the ending that unlocks the second playthrough of the book. So, in case you haven't read the book, one of the endings involves Ralph getting into a staring contest with Golden Freddy until Golden Freddy kills him. And then at the end of that ending, we get a note that says, restart the game, clear your inventory except for the cell phone. That is your bonus item. Play again for a new experience. And that is true. That, again, that's the asterisk ending. But if you play again with the cell phone, which is technically Brownen's cell phone, that's the playthrough where you leave the FNAF 1 phone voicemails. And you do one every night except for night 4, and you use the phone throughout the night to affect the animatronics, call other places, get some Easter eggs. So it seems like this phone playthrough is the canon ending. But there's a problem. 1, like I said, the punctuation doesn't line up. But 2, this phone we got by doing a separate ending and taking it off of Brownen's corpse. So there's a question here. Is it saying that the canon ending involves a phone Ralph just brought himself? Or is this some like weird hallucination thing? My interpretation is that the canon ending involves Ralph bringing his own mobile phone to the FNAF 1 pizzeria. I think it has to be, because if not, it's way too much. And it's just assumed that, like, yes, we pick up the phone from Brownen's corpse, but on the canon playthrough, we already had a phone with us. That's what I think makes the most sense in this situation. That being said, how do we know what ending is the canon one moving forward if the punctuation doesn't line up? In both VIP and the week before, to get to what is likely the canon ending, it's the most involved. It requires the most steps, the most things to do, the most items. That ending, the hardest one to get, has been the canon one both times. So for now, moving forward, I'm going to assume whichever ending is the hardest ending to get is the canon ending. So we'll see moving forward if that's correct when the week before comes out, because we know what the correct ending of, or not the week before, Return to the Pit comes out, because we know how Into the Pit ends. Granted, there's like 5 endings to Into the Pit, so it'll be a little bit more difficult. But if there's one really hard ending to get from Return to the Pit, and it lines up with one of the Into the Pit endings, I'm going to assume that's the canon one. Escape the Pizzaplex is also interesting, but Escape the Pizzaplex seems like a prequel to Security Breach, because we're avoiding staff members, and if there's humans working at the Pizzaplex, this has to be before Security Breach. So we'll see. But I mentioned, so there's, for me, 2 big things that come from the week before. The week before touches on a lot of lore, but it says a lot about a couple points of lore. One of them, and this is the subject of this week's video, so I guess consider it a teaser, but one of them that the book talks about a lot is It's Me. And it's less that the book talks about It's Me, but we hear It's Me a lot from a lot of different sources. For one, Golden Freddy obviously says it a lot. We get an instance where there's this like weird humming, and like a weird children's song adjacent thing that Ralph hears from a bathroom stall. And when he opens it, It's Me is angrily scribbled in ink. Or at one point, if you call backstage, somebody answers it. And then you hear a kid like giggling and laughing. And then a garbled voice says, It's me. And if you ask, who are you or something, your phone breaks. And we don't know for certain that's Golden Freddy, but it's backstage. No one's there yet. So it's most likely Golden Freddy saying that. And of course, like I mentioned, when Ralph is having that stare off with Golden Freddy, It's Me starts appearing in his mind until eventually we get a page of just It's Me, like repeated a lot. So Golden Freddy says it, and that like tracks with what we understand about It's Me. It's Me is like Golden Freddy's tagline. But Freddy says it, like regular Freddy, a couple times. He says it before he kills Ralph in one of the endings. He says it so one of the endings, Ralph is trapped, and Freddy and the gang make it to his apartment while he's trapped, and his daughter calls the security office, and he's like, why are you calling me? And she goes, your friends came over. And he goes, who came over? Put the phone on. And Freddy says over the phone, It's me, and laughs. So like assuming they then kill Coppelia or whatever. So like Freddy Fazbear is saying it's me separate from the pizzeria, which is crazy. Another thing that muddies the water is Brownin and Ralph, while they're dying inside of a animatronic suit, say it's me. In Brownin's voicemail, when she's warning Ralph about the plan she thinks the animatronics are doing, she ends it with "it's me." And in the canon ending, when Ralph is stuffed into an animatronic suit, I assume a Freddy suit, and his thoughts as he's trying to figure out what's going on are like, something smells, it's me, and the "it's me" is an italic font. And also, so does Chica. In one of the endings, when they come to your apartment and kill you and then your daughter, while you're bleeding out on the ground, Chica comes out, leans in, and in your daughter's voice says, "it's me." So like, it's not just Golden Freddy. So what is it? Because the longest time it was thought to be the crying child reaching out to Michael. After all, as far as I'm aware, in the games, anytime Golden Freddy is saying "it's me," Michael is there. So that was kind of the logic behind it. But now, not only is Golden Freddy saying it to other people, but all the animatronics are saying it. So it's a little unclear. In Friday's video, I kind of go into it possibly being part of their programming. The idea of like, these characters were programmed to speak, and likely would say like, "Oh, hi everyone, it's me, Freddy." And maybe now that they're possessed, all they're managing to choke out is "it's me." I like that theory. I'm going to go with that theory for now. But an issue with that theory, admittedly, and I say this in the video, is there are moments when, like Ralph, for instance, when staring at Golden Freddy, he sees "it's me" in his mind, and he's thinking the words "it's me." So if it's just an auditory processing thing, that wouldn't happen. So there's something deeper here that we just don't know yet. It could be that that's just what dead people say in the FNAF universe. That's just a thing that they say. I don't know. It could be saying that even if they're different animatronics, even if they're far away, they're in some way under the control of Golden Freddy, and Golden Freddy says "it's me" through them. But even if that's true, why is Golden Freddy saying "it's me"? It took this like thing that we were all pretty sure of and just threw it out the window. What is it now? We are starting from step one. But it is interesting that it pretty much deconfirms "it's me" being from the crying child to Michael Afton. The crying child, or Dave, if Hyperdroid and some other people, I believe Mamakato, a couple people made this theory of Dave from the logbook, and I'm just going to go with that moving forward. I think it's way easier to say the crying child than the crying child to say Dave Afton. Maybe Davey for short, or for long, I guess. But similar to the phone guy, I won't just start saying Dave Afton. I'll probably say the crying child or Dave Afton for a couple months until that's more in the lexicon. Then I'll switch over. Anyway, "it's me" is weird, which is why I devoted a whole video to it. And I think next week's video is the Bite of 87, because this book mentions it a lot. And it's not even just directly. Ralph does at some point. Let me see if I can find the page. Get you some direct quotes, because the wording here is important. Yeah, the franchise, this is on page 14. "The franchise has truly fallen on hard times thanks to those pernicious rumors about missing kids and the lingering bad press from the Bite of 87. If only the victim could tell what he did to provoke that attack, but he doesn't talk anymore, or do much else. So the press completely blew the incident out of proportion, and the place hasn't been the same since." So, like, immediately, that's really interesting. It does deconfirm my theory for a while was that Cassie's dad is Jeremy, but Jeremy Fitzgerald from FNAF 2 and the Bite victim. But according to this, the victim doesn't speak or do much anymore. So to me, I would assume being Cassie's dad and a worker at the Pizzaplex and the main character from Help Wanted 2 is out of his range anymore. So I'm not quite sure. I definitely still think he's the Bonnie bully, but probably not Jeremy Fitzgerald anymore. Unless Jeremy Fitzgerald isn't the victim of the Bite of 87 and he's just a guy who worked there, which is possible, but I don't know. Ralph says the victim provoked the attack in that passage, which to me says that the victim is probably an adult. Because Ralph is pretty like defensive of Fazbear's, especially this early in. But I don't think he's so defensive of Fazbear's that he would say that about a kid. That he'd be like, if only that kid let people know that it's his fault. That feels like the victim is an adult. Not only that, but like we know in FNAF 2, it's said multiple times, the animatronics are great with kids, but they stare at adults and they are weird around adults. So that already led people to believe that adults did it. Or that adults were the victim. Not only that, what page is this? I can't find this one. It's somewhere in here. But essentially, there's a line that said like, after all, you can't spell team without M-E, which was like something Ralph said in one of the orientations. And after the bite of 87, some employees started joking around saying, you can't spell team without M-E-A-T. And he made them stop it, but it was like, oh, at least it shows they were listening during orientation or whatever. But to me, if the staff are spreading rumors about like we're meat, we're just grinder, to me that says a staff member is likely the one who died from the bite of 87, which I think does track with what we know. A lot of people assume it's Jeremy Fitzgerald, who's a night guard, but would have been transitioned to the daytime shift since it happened during the day, because they were in free roam mode. Well, so bite of 87, they can't roam around during the day anymore, which, you know, logic dictates then that the bite of 87 happened while they were free roaming during the day. But as far as what this book tells us, that's even more information about who this might be. On 166, we get, in the aftermath of the bite of 87, staff spread tips around the restaurant of how to slow or stop the animatronics if they ever attacked again. You put a stop to those harmful rumors, One of the survival strategies suggested at the time was shining a bright light into the animatronics' eyes to disorient them and temporarily lock them in position until they reset their sensors and recalibrated their programming. And then he tries it on Chica and it doesn't work. That little trick might work on another animatronic, but Chica loves being in the spotlight. That other animatronic is Foxy. At a different point, you use the flashlight to stun Foxy. So this was leading me to think, is this book saying that Foxy, or I guess during FNAF 2, Withered Foxy, is the culprit of the bite of 87? So I made a short on that a couple days ago, and some people in the comments gave me good information and some corrections. I pointed out that in FNAF 2, the flashlight stuns and makes Withered Foxy go away, and it's only Withered Foxy that works that way. But some people in the comments reminded me that the flashlight does actually stall every animatronic on the cameras. I forgot about that because you don't use the cameras in FNAF 2, but the flashlight does work on every animatronic to stall them. However, Withered Foxy is the only one who will get turned away from it. Counterpoint to that, in this book, like I mentioned, you use the flashlight to save yourself by shining it in Foxy's eyes at some point. So they mean another animatronic like Foxy. Here's another thing. I totally forgot to mention this in the short, but I had it written down and somebody pointed out in the comments. Page 18, we get this line. Everything, talking about Foxy, everything about this animatronic screams not for kids, which is probably why his attraction has been marked out of order for the reopening. Though as far as you know, he's never bitten any kids, and kids is italicized. As far as you know, he's never bitten any kids, says he has bitten an adult before. So I think this book is confirming Foxy, or Withered Foxy, did the bite of 87, which is really interesting. It's one of those mysteries that doesn't really affect anything, but it's nice to have a confirmation, you know? And is this confirmation? No. But I think this is incredibly strong evidence to say it was Withered Foxy. At least it's better evidence than we've ever had about the bite of 87's culprit. I've heard people say Mangle because of the angle of the jump scare. I've heard people say Toy Chica because of her UCN lines and taking off her beak. But as far as Withered Foxy goes, this book makes a great case for it. So I'm just going to assume it's Withered Foxy moving forward, and I'll get more in depth to that next week and kind of really analyze it. But those are my thoughts. All in all, great book. That's just 2 points of lore that this book presents. This book has so much damn lore. And I didn't even talk about one of the things that it says because I have a question. I believe I grabbed it for this podcast. I didn't. I think I specifically didn't. I didn't even talk about like the bite of 83, which confirms to be one called The Big Bite, but also happened in 1983. Like, there's so many things that this book confirms, which is awesome. That being said, we'll move on to questions. So if you want your questions answered on the podcast, you can send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. That is in the description to copy and paste because it's paid to type out. Our first question comes from Akin, he, him. My question is, what are the shadow animatronics, Bonnie and Freddy? And do they have any relationship to main lore, as they are hardly talked about? Thank you for your question, Akin. I have a full video on this that I think I put out last January, like a year and a half ago. And I haven't talked about it since because my opinion has not changed. That being said, ID's Fantasy has been kicking around a shadow animatronic video, and it should be coming out in a month or so. So keep an eye out for that, because I'm really interested to see what she thinks on it. My thoughts, I think Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are agony reflections of deaths. When I made the video, I thought it was specifically Cassidy's dying and Charlie dying formed Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. However, since then, multiple people have kind of brought up other interpretations. And I think right now, the interpretation I like the most is Shadow Freddy is the agony of the missing child incident personified and manifested. That being that when the missing child incident happened, their agony coalesced into Shadow Freddy, creating this entity. And Shadow Bonnie is the agony of the DCI, or the 5 kids that were killed at FNAF 2. Their agony manifests into Shadow Bonnie, which is why Shadow Freddy is Freddy, but Shadow Bonnie is Toy Bonnie. And I think that's a really clean and clear-cut explanation for their existence. As for, like, does that affect the rest of the lore? Not really, because they don't do a whole lot. They just pop up in unexpected places. But we'll see. I think they're definitely something that could be re-brought up in a meaningful way. That being, like, follow me, we see a purple Freddy. Is that Shadow Freddy? I personally believe it's William tricking the animatronics. Or in the Happiest Day minigames, we get Shadow Bonnie. What does that mean? No idea. Truth be told, the Happiest Day minigames are weird, so I could not tell you. But as far as like meaningful additions to the lore, I think that is yet to be seen. But I do really like the interpretation of them being manifestations of the MCI and the DCI. So we'll see. And I hope ID's Fantasy agrees with me in some way, but we'll see. I can't wait to see what she says on it. But thank you for your question, Akin. Our next question comes from Nayeli, she, her. So I was wondering, what is your stance on the YouTube video I Saw FNAF's Biggest Mystery Survival Logbook? Thank you for your question. I brought this up earlier in the podcast. I've had so many comments, and it's kind of like when Dual Process put out their timeline, and I had so many comments asking me to talk about it. And I did dedicate a whole podcast to it because I disagreed with some points. I liked other points. And I was really like, this is a great promising start. I wish them the best. Hyperdroid's I Solved FNAF's Biggest Mystery Security Logbook. I haven't talked about it because I just agree with it. Like, I think the Dave theory makes a lot of sense. You know, I saw him do it, and then I believe Mamakato put one out that was very similar. And like both of them, like this theory just seems right to me. It's the best theory we've gotten so far. So unless somebody else can think of a better one, I'm just going to go with it. I understand if you don't agree with it, you know, it is loose, especially that fourth question. It's like, it's a rough, it's close, but it doesn't fit super, super, super cleanly. But to be honest, if you look at this and say, no, that's stupid, that can't be true, I think you're just being mad. Like, that's just being like mad. Because I think it does make logical sense. And it's by far the best solution we've gotten for the Foxy Grid. If you disagree with it, that's fine. But I think unless you can think of a better solution for the Foxy Grid, that's just the one I'm going to go with. So I haven't really made like a video or a podcast about it because I don't have anything to add to that conversation. Because I would just be like, yeah, it's a good video. I agree. Like, I can barely answer this question longer than 2 minutes because of that. But that's genuinely my answer is, what do I think about it? I think it's good and I agree with it. Like that. That's all I can add to that. He convinced me. But thank you for your question, Ailey. Our next question comes from Amber, she, her. If you could change any one confirmed canon thing about FNAF, what would you change? What would it become, and why? What I would change is Ennard sticks around, and instead of splitting into Baby and Molten Freddy, Ennard was so cool and we were robbed. True. That's a good contender, because I would love to see more Ennard. Ennard was such a good, interesting character that we got for like one custom night, and he's not even in the custom. We got one boss fight against him and we never saw him again. Huge missed opportunity there. Because Ennard is so cool. But as far as like what's one confirmed canon thing I would change, what's tricky here is there's not a lot of confirmed canon things. So like one of the things that I would like to change is like I would like to have Vanny be a bigger role in Security Breach, but that's not like a canon piece of lore that would change. You know what I mean? But as far as like a canon piece of the FNAF timeline, I would want changed. I think, is it petty to just say Henry's design because it's by Lady Fizzy or whatever? I don't know. Because a lot of people I think would say they'd remove Agony or remove Remnant. But I'm fine with both of those. I think it doesn't take... I think people who say it takes away from the supernatural elements of the story are really over-exaggerating. Because, like, Remnant is just a way to explain how a soul can change location, realistically. And the idea of Agony is cool. If you think Agony sucks, you're lame. I'm sorry. The idea of, like, the most raw negative human emotion manifesting is sick. That's cool. I'm sorry. I think I would just remove the DCI. The kids who were killed in FNAF 2 are so out of nowhere and so out of character and seemingly affect so little that I think I would make that not be a thing. Because like it adds nothing to the story and it just muddies the water. I think the MCI and Charlie should have been the only like at his hand direct killings. And then Elizabeth dies due to his idiocy, Crying Child dies to his negligence, so on and so forth. But I think the MCI and Charlie should have been the only director. I think the DCI adds nothing and muddies the water. So if I could change one canon thing, I would get rid of the DCI. I don't think it adds to the story in any meaningful way. That's all I can think about, though. Thank you for the question. Our last question comes from Caddy, she, her. I would really like to know your thoughts about the theory that the books are Freddy Fazbear's company-produced media, and also the theory about the logbook being a Fazbear Frights branded workbook. I'm glad that you split this up, because the first question is very interesting. I've heard a lot of people bring up, what if Fazbear Frights and Tales from the Pizzaplex are in-universe short stories, like how the older games are in-universe games? I've heard it. I don't like it that much. I think it really muddies the water in an unnecessary way. Like, I understand that, like, there are Fazbear Frights references on, like, arcade machines, and that's often used as evidence. But there's also the Joy of Creation arcade machine, like, the Joy of Creation reference arcade machine in Security Breach. So I really think the arcade machines are just fun Easter eggs, which would then explain why Fazbear Frights stories are mentioned in it. But adding on to that, I'm pretty sure Into the Pit, the game, is in the game's timeline. And if it is, how the fuck is the Into the Pit story an in-universe produced book? Like, I don't buy Frights Fiction or Tales Fiction. I think it's too weird and messy to fit cleanly anywhere. And it's kind of unnecessary. I would only try to fit something messily into a timeline if it's necessary, and I don't think it is. However, what are my thoughts on the logbook being a Fazbear's Frights branded workbook? That I'm kind of really on board with. Not the version we have. I think the version we have with Mike's writing, the faded text, the altered text, I think that is not the in-universe book. I think the book itself, without any altercations, without the red text, without the faded text, without the altered text, I think that book is an in-universe workbook that they sold at Fazbear's Frights. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it lines up timeline-wise with when Michael Afton would have gotten his hands on it. However, I think the version we have is Mike's after he's working with it, communicating with these spirits. So that's something I've thought for a while, and I do like that a lot. But as far as Frights Fiction and Tales Fiction, I don't buy it. Thank you for your question, though. And I think that'll be about it for today. So if you have any questions you want answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. Link is in the description because it's paid to type out. To the emails in the description to copy and paste because it's paid to type out. But until next time, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.